Hello, everyone. My name is Daron Raynor, fitness specialist with the community outreach of Kettering Health. And today we're talking about staying strong at work, focusing specifically on the lower body. So there's this principle called use it or lose it. When we're up and about, when we're exercising or at the gym or going on walks, that's an aspect of using it. We're putting our muscles through activity in order to maintain or improve our strength and endurance. When we lose it, many times it's because we are sedentary or we're sitting around very often. We can look over things like the coronavirus pandemic, the lockdown. Most of our activity has probably dropped significantly. And over time, we found that we have lost what we probably once were before the pandemic. From fitness, from strength, from endurance, all of the above, that's an aspect of losing it. So we see sitting versus standing, moving versus sedentary, or fatigued versus energized. All of these play into the topic of use it or lose it. So the benefits to lower body strength are found in joint health. Our knees, our hips, our ankles, and even our low back all together as a unit work together in order to maintain the strength that we have and in order to maintain the endurance and the tone in our body. Improved flexibility and mobility is another piece of being able to use it. When we're bending down to pick up a heavy object such as a box, we have to be able to have the mobility and also to have the flexibility in order to get down and get up comfortably and safely. Increased circulation is another aspect of improving our lower body strength. When we find ourselves squeezing our muscles or flexing our muscles and relaxing our muscles, what we're doing is we're forcing our body to pump blood throughout the body and also deliver nutrients to those muscles. We also decrease our risk of blood clots by doing so, especially for those who may find themselves sitting for a long time. The blood could pool or stay in different areas of the body much longer than flowing as it should. We also increase our endurance. So for an individual who may be, let's say, a nurse or a doctor who may be on the patient floor, if they're standing a long time, sometimes you find yourself getting fatigued. With improving the strength and with improving our endurance and with adding a routine of strength and exercise, we're able to stand a bit longer, we're able to feel better for longer, and we're also able to maintain our strength and our sharpness in our lower body. So let's take a look at a few exercises that we can utilize for our lower body that we can do at work on the job. These exercises will be about 2 to 3 rounds. You can do for about 10 to 15 repetitions. And when done correctly, as I'll demonstrate for you, you'll feel the burn and you'll also find yourself using it a lot more and improving. The first exercise that we have here is knee raises. So this is a really great exercise for hip mobility and also for balance. What we find ourselves doing is we're going to stand nice and tall. Our chest is up and our eyes are forward. We're going to take one leg and we're just going to bring our knee as high as we can and back down. Now, if we need assistance, you can always have your hand on your desk or on a chair. And again, standing up nice and tall, keeping our abs tight, bring our knee right up and back down. We don't want to find ourselves leaning back as compensating. So if you find yourself only coming here, that's okay. Something is better than nothing. Eventually, you want to be able to come all the way up, hold for a second or two, and return back down. Again, 10 to 15 repetitions, then switch sides. You'll find that your lower abs are strengthening, your hips are mobilizing, and the balance in your standing leg is improving. Our next exercise that we have here is hip circles. So this is another mobility exercise and also a great stretching exercise for our hips and also in our low back. What we'll do is have our hands on our hips, nice and tall again. We're just going to lean out one way and we're going to come all the way around to the front, lean out the other way, come all the way to the back. Many times when we sit for long hours of the day, when we're stuck in a static position, we get very tight in the hips, especially in the front, and we'd have a lot of slackness in the back. So what we want to do is be able to mobilize everything in order to give ourselves the flexibility and mobility in our hips so that when we're up and about, when we're moving, we don't find that stiffness or that stiff, achy back coming into play. The next exercise that we have here is knee extension and knee flexion. These two exercises work well together because one is stretching a muscle while the other is flexing a muscle, and then vice versa with the other exercise. The muscle is being stretched while the other is being flexed. So our first exercise here is knee extension. What we're going to find ourselves doing is flexing the muscles in the front of the thigh and stretching the muscles in the back of the thigh or the hamstrings. So what I'll do is I'll sit and I'll grab my chair nice and tall, and I'm just going to straighten my knee out as far as I can, hold for about 1 to 2 seconds before I return back down. So it looks like this. I kick out, hold, 1, 2, and I return back down. I repeat again, kick out, 1, 2, and I come back down. A note as well is don't be slouched doing it. When we're slouched, we don't feel the best stretch that we can in the back of our leg as we should. So sit up nice and tall, chest up, eyes forward. As soon as I kick out, I feel that muscle in the front of my thigh flexing, and I feel that stretch in the back of my thigh. Give it a try for about 10 to 15 repetitions. Repeat for the other leg, and you'll feel that burn, and eventually the tone will increase, the endurance will increase, and you'll be able to function a lot better in the lower body. The next exercise that we have is our knee flexion. Now again, this comes from stretching the front of the thigh this time and flexing the back of the thigh. So I'm going to stand up nice and tall. Following the same motion of the knee extension, I'm going to do this with the flexion. I'm going to kick back instead of kicking forward, hold for about 1 to 2 seconds, and I'm going to come back down to a standing position. Nice and tall, bring my leg back behind me, feel the squeeze in the back of the leg, stretching in the front, and return back down. This will be done again for about 10 to 15 repetitions, and we'll see that balance that we were talking about. With the knee extension, I'm flexing the front of the thigh, stretching the back. With the knee flexion, I'm flexing the back of the thigh, stretching the front. Then we have kickbacks. Kickbacks are a great exercise for strengthening a very large muscle, the glutes, which is in the back or our rear end. We can utilize a band if we have access to it, but because I'm going to show you a modification, we won't need a band. We're going to hold our desk or our chair here, standing up nice and tall, and all I'm going to do is keep my leg completely straight and kick back, hold for about 1 to 2 seconds, and back down. Notice how when I kick back, I'm not tilting, trying to compensate, thinking that I'm getting more bang for my buck. That's not happening. The key is to feel the squeeze completely in the rear end. So I just go back as far as my mobility and my range of motion will allow me, and I should feel the squeeze in the rear and come back down. Many times when we strengthen these muscles, we find that our low back is a lot more efficient in bearing weight and also in enduring without getting that stiffness or getting a lot of the stress that it normally gets. So strengthening the glutes equals a healthy low back. Then we have hip abduction and hip adduction. So with hip abduction, which is A, B as in boy, duction, we're going to stand up nice and tall and we are going to abduct our hip away. Again, just like with the previous exercise, I'm not tilting, I'm nice and tall, my leg comes out, I feel that squeeze in the side of my hip, and I come back down. I repeat for 10 to 15 repetitions. Now, with hip adduction, ADD, my leg is out and I'm going to bring it across my body. I'm adding it to my body. I squeeze for a second and I come back out. I lift out, I come in, I squeeze for a second, I add my leg to my body, and I come back. This is going to work the outer part of the hips, which again plays into that low back stress relief and also strengthens the inner thighs for overall lower body support. Then we have chair squats. Now, squats are one of my favorite exercises because it utilizes the whole body altogether. Many times when people are squatting, we see ourselves going more through the knees and we wind up having knee pain, knee stress, and even sometimes a lot of low back pain because we're not utilizing the body in a holistic, balanced perspective. So this is how we're going to do it. I'll show you from the side and I'll show you from the front. I'm standing nice and tall. My feet are about shoulder width apart. And instead of initiating at the knees, which is what many people do, I'm going to sit into the hips because that's where the larger muscles are and that's where my support system is coming out of. So I push my hips back with my chest up and I sit as I reach for the chair behind me and I stand up. You can always have your desk or you can have a chair in front of you or just your arms out. And again, instead of going down through the knees, I push my hips back, keep my chest and eyes forward, and I sit and reach for the chair behind me. I feel no stress in my knees. I feel my low back is well supported because of my posture. And then I press to the floor as I stand up tall. Now, when I'm demonstrating the squat from the front, it's important to note the position of the knees. This is why we're showing it. So my feet are about hips width apart. Again, I'm going to sit back in the hips, keep my chest up and eyes forward, just as I demonstrated before. But watch my knees here. I sit, I sit, I sit. My knees are collapsed in, and then I press up. That is a no-go. Now, what we're doing is we're incorporating all of the exercises that we did before into this one exercise in the squat. We're kicking our legs out as we did in abduction. We're sitting into our hips to activate the glutes. We're flexing the front and the back of the thigh, and we're also stretching the front and the back of the thigh. This is all coming together. So instead of my knees collapsing, I want to keep those hips turned on as we've practiced. So I sit up tall and I keep my knees out as though I have a rubber band around and I want to break that band. Then I stand nice and tall. Again, no knee collapsing, knees out, sit back, break the band, press to the floor, stand up nice and tall. Do it about 10 to 15 times, and you'll see a lot of good results coming out of it. Up next, we have heel raises and toe raises. These are very good exercises to utilize for the lower leg. So our heel raises, we're going to stand up here, nice and tall, and I'm going to go up on my tiptoes, raise my heels up off the ground, and come back down. If you want a little more stretch, what you can do is you can put like a plank underneath the balls of your foot, and you'll get a little bit more stretch in the calf muscles. But otherwise, again, nice and tall, up on the tiptoes, and return back to standing. Now with our toe raises, this is going to work the front of the shin. So just as we did with flexion and extension, where we found that our front of our thigh would stretch and our back of our thigh would squeeze or vice versa, this is the same thing with the lower leg. As I'm going up on my tiptoes in the heel raises, I'm stretching the front of my shin. And as now with the toe raises, I pull my toes up, I'm stretching the back or the calf, and I'm strengthening and squeezing the muscles or the tibialis anterior of the front of the shin. So I sit nice and tall, pull my toes up as far as they'll allow me, and back down. Hold for about 1 to 2 seconds, squeeze, and return back down. Our next exercise is the pelvic tilt. This is a great exercise for strengthening the muscles of the lower abs and also of the lower back. It's mobilizing. So one aspect is moving. And again, as we said, when I'm tucking my pelvis under, I'm squeezing the lower abs. I'm getting a stretch in my low back. And then when I bring the pelvis back behind me, I'm squeezing the muscles of the low back and allowing a stretch in the lower abs here. This is a good exercise as well when we find ourselves in a stiff position from sitting so long, just sitting, trying to bring the front of our hip up to our rib cage, and then also trying to kick our tailbone back and bring it as high up as we can behind us. Utilize this about 10 to 15 repetitions, and you'll see a little bit more mobility in that low back, less stiffness. Finally, we have some stretching to add in for preventing muscle stiffness. We have our quad stretch, which we're going to stand here nice and tall, holding onto a desk or chair. I'm going to grab my ankle behind me, and I'm going to pull and feel the stretch in the front of my thigh. As I do this, I can push my hip forward to get more stretch, or I can just hold to a point that'll allow me. Now, if we find ourselves restricted and we can't really get our hand to grab our heel behind us or grab our ankle, I can put my foot on the chair behind me and I can just sit back in it a little bit and I'll feel that stretch in the front of my thigh. You can do this, hold for about 6 deep breaths or about 20 to 25 seconds, and then release and do the other leg. Then we have our hamstring stretch. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stand up nice and tall. I'm gonna bend one leg while I kick out onto my heel of the other leg. So I'm almost like I'm walking, right? I look like a walking person. When I do this, I'm now just gonna bend at my hips and reach for my toes and hold again for about 6 deep breaths or 20 to 25 seconds. I'll feel the stretch in the back of my leg, all the way down into my calf and even into my rear a little bit. Now, if this is too challenging to do, being that bending can be a bit much, sit in a chair as you're at your desk, kick one leg out, take a deep breath, Exhale, and then just reach for your toe. Again, hold for about 6 deep breaths or about 20 to 25 seconds, and you'll find a lot of improvement in your mobility and flexibility and preventing the stiffness in the low back. Many times our low back hurts because our muscles in our hamstrings and our glutes are a bit too tight. So loosening those can help relieve some of that stress and pain. So with the exercises that we learned here today and with the information on using it versus losing it, let's take this and put it into action. Let's go out there and use it. I'm Daron Raynor, fitness specialist with Community Outreach of Kettering Health. We'll see you next time.